Perhaps you don't play alchemy, but you will still love today's cards and flavor. If you do play alchemy, you'll be even more excited. Let's look at the new cards. Starting with the cycle of collectors that all conjure cards named Mox and then something. And if you don't know, these Moxes are really special cards. They are artifacts that cost 0 mana and that will tap for a mana. So these were really overpowered, of course, and cost like maybe 600, maybe thousands of dollars if you're a little bit unlucky or don't look for too long. Ruby Collector, for example, is a 1 mana detective. Again, with the detectives, sure. It's a 1/1, and when you attack with 3 or more creatures, you conjure the Mox Ruby, for example, the red one, into your hand. Then you pay 1 and the red for creatures you control to get +1/+0. So 1 extra power for this turn. And if you don't know, this fire breathing effect of giving all of your creatures is really powerful, especially on a 1 mana creature. But the fact that eventually when you attack with 3 creatures you get a Mox Ruby into your hand is really cool as well. All of these cards are 2 colors in a way. They are 1 color, for example white in this case, and then red for the Mox Ruby and the effect. And there is some flavor here as well, so let's look at those. For example, we have Emerald Collector, which is blue for the creature and green for the emerald. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. And then for 3 mana, including a green mana, it gets to be base power and toughness 4 and 4. That is a very flavorful thing to do because green loves big creatures. Now, it starts as a blue creature, a 1/2, but it could become a green creature, a 4/4. You do get the Mox Emerald eventually when you draw your 3rd card in a turn. And of course, all the cards will help you in doing this. Next up is the Pearl Collector, which is black and then white for the Pearl. It's a 3/3 with Death Touch and Lifelink. And it says, for 3 mana, including a white, another target creature perpetually, so forever, gains Lifelink. And at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, if you gain 4 or more life this turn, conjure a card named Mox Pearl into your hand. This ability triggers only once. Now, note that, for example, in this case, Pearl Collector on its own cannot grant you the 4 life in 1 turn, necessarily, because it has Lifelink and 3 power. So it's just short of giving you the 4 power you need. That means that you either need Lifelink in black or you already need the white mana to pay for giving another creature Lifelink. I think that's really flavorful here as well, or at least well designed. Then there's the Sapphire Collector, which grants you a blue rock. It says when you cast your 2nd non-creature spell in a turn, you conjure a card named Mox Sapphire into your hand. This is a 3 mana 3/3 with prowess. And for 3 mana you can give an instant or sorcery in your graveyard flashback. So that effect to me seems already very powerful again as well. The flashback cost is equal to its mana cost, by the way, so you will need to pay 3 and then the cost for your spell again. So it is a little bit more expensive, but that is value already. And on top of that, getting a rock that is so cheap to play, giving you an extra mana and ramping you in red, I think that is a really cool thing to do. Jet Collector is a green and a black one, and I think, of course, in the colors, the strongest one. It's a 2 mana 2/2. You get your Mox Jet, so the black one, when you have 4 or more cards in your graveyard, which doesn't seem too hard to do. And then for X and black, you put target creature card with mana value X from your graveyard onto the battlefield. That is just 1 extra mana to play any card from your graveyard. And you will get that 1 extra mana from the Mox Jet, of course. Aside from that, you get a finality counter on the creature you bring back. So when it goes back to the graveyard, it will be exiled. So this isn't an infinite thing or anything, but this is still a lot of value, and I think this makes these creatures really strong. Now, there have been some legendaries that have been released. For example, Saint Elenda, which is a 7 mana with 3 white mana vampire cleric, a 4/7 with lifelink. That says when she enters the battlefield, you conjure a card of your choice from Saint Helenda's spellbook, which is, for example, Faith Feathers, which is a enchant permanent. You get 4 life, so all of these cards from her spellbook give you 4 life. And enchanted permanent can't block or attack, and its activated abilities can be activated unless they're mana abilities. So the mana dorks will still work, but other abilities won't. And you gain 4 life, and all of these cards give you 4 life. And then at the beginning of your end step, if you gained life this turn, which you will pretty easily be able to do, you create an XX white avatar creature token, where X is the amount of life you gained this turn. So very easily, I assume you will be able to get an 8/8, and every turn with Saint Helenda out, you will probably be able to get at least a 4/4 on top of this 4/7. So that is value. You do need to probably be in a lifelink deck to make this powerful at all, because it is 7 mana, so it is really very top end heavy. Next up is Rankle, another legendary that you know and probably don't love. It's a 3 mana 1/3, or maybe you are very chaotic. It has flying and it gets lifelink and haste as long as an opponent controls no creatures. So you will want to perhaps board wipe them, then you will get a Rankle with lifelink and haste, a 1/3, but it can grow stronger. Because Rankle says whenever a player discards a card, it perpetually, so forever, gets an extra power. So I think this will become good once you have it being a 3/3 with lifelink and haste. It will be really good. But otherwise, I think you will want to play this for the discard and sacrifice ability. And I think they designed this to be in the set because Rankle is loved by some of you crazy people. Next up is Jace Zane, the Fang Bringer. It's a 3 mana 3/4 with Death Touch, a very green body I would say. And when Jace enters the battlefield and whenever you cast a snake spell, for all of you snake tribal lovers, you conjure a card named Ambush Viper, a 2 mana 1/2 with Flash and Death Touch, into the top 6 cards of your library at random. That doesn't seem very strong, and at first it isn't, but it also perpetually gains when this creature enters the battlefield, you draw a card. So for 2 mana you get to play the creature at flash speed and then draw a card as well, cycling through your deck to get to the next snake spell. And the fact that Jace Zane, when it's on the battlefield, will create a new Ambush Viper when you play an Ambush Viper means that you can go off eventually. You do need something else to make this pop off really, because the 1/2s don't really win you the game immediately, but it is. And I think it's a theme here. It is a lot of value. Again. Next is a new legendary that is called Vampiric, the Goose Tyrant, which seems to be from Eldraine, just from the mechanics alone. It's a 3 mana 3/3 with flying and trample and ward 1, because flying, trample, 3/3 for 3 wasn't enough. And whenever you sacrifice a token, Vampiric perpetually, so forever, gets +1/+1. A sort of +1 counter you could say, but this ability also triggers if the goose is in exile. And why would it be in exile? Well, of course, if you play the adventure part of it, which is an instant for 2 mana, Vampiric goes into exile. And that means that you can grow it by sacrificing a bunch of tokens and only play it when you feel it is safe or useful to play it. The instant for 2 mana says draw 2 cards for 2 mana, but then you also discard 2 cards. So it's a very strong loot effect. And then you create a food token, which is a token you could sacrifice to give Vampiric perpetually +1/+1. A 3 mana flying trample ward 1 4/4 is really insane. So if you get to do this, pay 4 mana at first and then 3 mana later, this is a really high value thing as well. But I think the 3 mana 3/3 is good enough already. In that sense. Emperor Apatsak, or Apatsak, maybe Intli IV. We have heard about this character in the story from Ixalan when they entered into the earth and the young emperor had to make some difficult decisions, but was mostly helped by their advisors. It's a Naya colored 3/4, so 3 mana again for a 3/4. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, that creature gains haste if its power is 4 or greater. If its toughness is 4 or greater, you gain 4 life. If its mana value is 4 or greater, you seek a creature card. So meaning you get a lot of value, you get to make your strong creature stronger by giving it haste, and you gain 4 life whenever you play a defensive creature. I think this is a very strong effect, especially if you play a 4 mana 4/4, for example. You get to give it haste, gain 4 life, and seek a creature card. Meaning you get everything you want in the Naya deck ever. Next up, another legendary, which we know already, is Granzo Crooked Jailer, a 6 mana Rakdos card, so you will never get to that mana value. Well, maybe if you are control or something. Or you have a lot of Mox cards onto the battlefield, could be. When Granzo enters the battlefield and at the beginning of your upkeep, heist targets opponent's library, meaning you steal something from their library. Once each turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a spell you cast but you don't own. Meaning you get to steal something from their library and play it for free, basically, once each turn. So if you have other effects that do this, or just use Granzo whenever, you get to play them for free. If your opponent is having a bunch of very high costed things in their deck, then you probably will win. After you played Granzo and got it to enter the battlefield, then yes, this could be strong, but you do need to get there, of course. Next up is Nashi, Illusion Gadgeteer. It's a 4 mana rat that has stolen the elixir from the leader from the Thunder Junction Blue and Red faction. I kind of forgot. But Nashi right now should be really strong. He has found out how to use his illusion magic together with his mechanical origami. He has a potion that should make him as strong as a Godheim god. And he has a spirit which can tell him all about enchantments and stories and story magic for that matter. It's a 4 mana 4/4, so that's already good. It has Menace and Ward 2, and when it enters the battlefield, you secretly choose a card in your graveyard and conjure a duplicate of it in your hand. If the duplicate isn't a land, it perpetually gains flash. So you get to replay something from your graveyard, but you also get to give it flash. So I think you will need to give this to, sorry for the joke, but a flashy card, so that it will have a very strong effect at instant speed. Next up is Tesa, her first real ghost card, I would say. A 4 mana 0/5, weird, but it has starting intensity 0. When she enters the battlefield, you create a 1/1 with flying. And Tesa intensifies by 1, which means forever she will have an extra intensity. Spirits you control get an extra power, where X is Tesa's intensity. So for every time you get to enter the battlefield with Tesa, they get an extra power. So in this case, you start with a 2/1 with flying, but that could get out of hand really quickly. Now, how do you get to enter her onto the battlefield many times? Well, at the beginning of your end step, you may exile Tesa, and at the beginning of your next upkeep, you return Tesa to the battlefield under its owner's control, and you give her haste. Also note that she is a 0/5, so why would you give her haste? Well, she is a spirit as well. So with Tesa's intensity, you get to grow her power as well. And I think this is a lovely piece of flavor, because Tesa works with spirits. She always has worked with spirits, but now she is a spirit herself, and she can empower herself as well. I think that's beautiful. Next up, we see a god and a vampire on the same card, but we just are ignoring the god, I would say. It's Vona from Ixalan. It's a 5 mana vampire. It's a 4/2 with menace as well. And when Vona enters the battlefield, you destroy target non-land, non-token permanent an opponent controls. So that's already a destruction spell, which is worth 3 of the mana, I would say. Then you may discard a card. If you do, conjure a duplicate of that permanent into your hand, the permanent you destroyed. And the duplicate perpetually gains mana of any type, can be spent to cast this spell. I think the flavor here is that you get to steal the bad god. Not sure about this, but it seems that way. And is this even the bad god? I think so, because of the wings. But I'm not 100% sure. This could be some sort of sea god as well, as we see the water around it, but that could also just be Ixalan. So I think Vona, the murderous vampire, has stolen the bad god by killing something. That's my assumption. Next up is Solitary Defiance, and here we go into a little bit of a storyline with Jace and Fresca, of which we of course already kind of know the story, but it's a 3-mana enchantment. As long as you control exactly one creature, meaning Jace I guess in the lore, that creature has Vigilance and Ward 2, so it will be protected from Phreesia, I think is what's happening here. Because when Jace was alone, he could protect himself because he didn't have to worry about his friends or lover. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, so when Jace starts the fight, the Phreesias alone, I think, you seek 2 non-land cards, because Jace's battle was all about getting to know the enemy that is Phreesia. And then you discard a card as well. I think that is about losing something in the fight, maybe. Next up is Cathartic Operation, a very beautiful and poetic art for one. It's a 5-mana instant. You return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand, meaning you get to return Jace and Fresca to your hand. Then you seek 2 non-creature non-land cards. I think they mean that they were looking for some treasure to find answers against the Omen Paths, is what I mean. But yeah, the operation succeeded. Sorry, spoiler alert. Silent Extraction is when Jace stole Fresca while he was still being fractionized from Ravnica. I'm not sure we see Ravnica here, but he did. And then he brought her back to his home plane to save her and himself eventually. It has green and blue. I think green for Fresca and blue for Jace. And choose target spell, you counter the spell unless the controller pays 2. What that's about, not sure, but Threshold. If 7 or more cards are in your graveyard, which Threshold is, seek a creature card with the same mana value as the chosen spell. Maybe stopping the Phreesias and then bringing Fresca onto the battlefield again. I think that's it. And Weave the Nightmare, last one about Jace. It's where he chose to be Ashiok. Maybe this was supposed to be the reveal. It's a 3-mana instant. Choose one. If you control a non-land permanent you don't own, as you cast a spell, you may choose 2. So if you've stolen a spell, meaning probably stolen Ashiok, you may choose 2. So maybe this is like a combination between Jace and Ashiok. And I'm starting to feel from the flavor of this that they are the same person right now. But you heist target opponent's library, so steal something from them. Your target creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn, which seems like an Ashiok thing to do, not really a Jace thing. And you counter target non-creature spell, which could be both. So I'm not really sure, but it seems like they're the same person. Sort of. Maybe. Or maybe Ashiok has gotten Jace's powers, all of them. And wouldn't it be very scary if Ashiok was Jace all along and he'd been saving Fresca and stuff? Well, next up, oh, I lied, there's another one with Jace. It's a Rakdos card with Jace on it, when he, I think, is stealing something from Professor Proft. I'm not sure, it looks a little bit different. It's a 2-mana sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. If excess damage was dealt to the creature this way, its controller discards a card, meaning they lose a little bit of, yeah, I think Proft's memory, judging from the Tetris blocks actually. With the greatest mana value among cards in their hand. Meaning you do get something valuable, I hope, but usually I think you're trying to discard the cheapest thing in your opponent's hand. But I guess also in this at this moment you have something strong to defeat your opponent's small creatures. So I'm not really sure. It does seem very Rakdos to be bullying on a smaller creature, and I think that's very flavorful. And I think cool they are looking back on the story a little bit I think it's cooler than making it its own story. Next up is 2 just cool cards. First up is Blooming Cactus Folk, a 5 mana 5/5 with trample. But the cool part, at the beginning of your end step, non-land cards in your hand perpetually gain. This spell costs 1 less to cast. That means that any spell, any instant, sorcery, creature, enchantment, what have you, will be 1 colorless mana less to cast. And doing that on all of your cards, I can tell you, is very strong, judging from other TCGs. But I think in Magic the Gathering, it's a little bit less strong, but still a very cool effect. You will need to have a bunch of cards in your hand. And I think that is why all the blue is in this art, because with blue, this green card is way cooler to play. And we have Just a Horse. 4 mana for a 4/4 is just a horse with a cactus head on his head. A 4/4 with haste. Whenever it attacks, it deals 1 damage to any target. If the grazer or just the horse is settled and the creature was dealt damage this way, the creature gains, it can block, so will help you attack in with the just horse. And damage isn't removed from this creature during cleanup steps, meaning it will add up and the 1 damage to the target will never go away, for example, but other damage won't go away either. So I think this is a really cool card from the fact that damage won't be removed from the creature forever, which is, I think, a new thing to add. And it's just a horse, which feels weird. And the perfect way to end this video. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.